Good morning, everyone. Dan Bates, President and CEO, Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, and we are here this morning, Coffee and Conversation. Hamilton, the Glow Up continues, part two. So we had part one a couple weeks ago, and now we're following up. Today, we're going to have panelists Mallory Greenham, Chief of Staff, Lauren Nelson, Director of Planning, Ken Rivera, Director of Building, and Cindy Hogg, our Health Commissioner. So I think everybody's on here, and we're ready to get started. So you know who I am. We're going to find out who all of you are in a minute. We are on Zoom, so if you have any questions, I'm sure the presenters won't mind if you interrupt them and ask your question. If you are on Facebook Live, type those questions in and we will get them answered for you. So with that, let's get started. Back to you, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. All right, so I'm Jason Michael Miller, Director of Membership and Engagement for the Greater Hamilton Chamber. And let's see, Sandy, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Sandy Kusnoff with Frank's Glass.
Thank you, thank you. And Susan, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes. Good morning, Susan Vaughn. I don't.
Let's see. Susan, I think you might have maybe two devices logged in. Maybe. I'm gonna jump to the next person, Susan, but when you're ready. Hold on one second. Next we have Wesley from Roof Aid. Can you
hear me?
Wesley, can you introduce yourself?
Yep, I'm Wesley with Roof Aid of Westchester.
Thank you. Cindy, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Cindy Keidel from Keidel Business Coaching, Hamilton's business coach.
Thank you. Jim?
I'm Jim Weibel. I'm with LD Images Photography.
Thank you. Karen?
Morning, I'm Karen Eatman with CareSource.
Thank you. Katie?
Hi, it's Katie McKnight with Butler County Regional Transit Authority.
Thank you. Let's see here. Yaya?
Hi, I'm Yaya Doso with Sponsio Coding LLC.
Thank you. Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Ansorg with Savvy Style Consignment.
Thank you. Tiffany?
Hi, I'm Tiffany Grab, Director of Marketing with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Thank you. Retreat?
Brad Howard, Retreat Mobile IV Hydration.
Thank you. Bruce? We'll come back to Bruce. We have GR. We'll come back to GR. And coming back to Susan. Is Susan still on the call? All right. I see we have Ben. Ben, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Ben Cornish, I'm with First Financial Bank.
Awesome. Thanks for being with us today. And Laura, can you introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Merrill with the Greater Hamilton Chamber.
Perfect. I think that is everybody. So we are going to get started. Today's Coffee and Conversation is going to be a little bit of a different structure. It's going to be a panel discussion. Last month we talked about Hamilton and the glow up continuing. We did a part one of that panel. Today we're going to be talking with Mallory Greenham, Lauren Nelson, Cindy Hogg, and Ken Rivera. And we're going to be asking just a lot of questions to get to know them and their department and how we can support them as a community. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat. There will be time afterwards to also ask additional questions. So first, I'm going to start off with Mallory. Mallory, can you tell us a little bit about your role and your department?
Well, I'm actually in two departments right now. I'm serving as both Chief of Staff in the City Manager's Office and Acting Economic Development Director. So I'm quite busy at the moment. But if we want to start with just the Chief of Staff role, you're basically kind of a wingman or wingwoman to the City Manager. You are working cross-departmentally to make sure that the strategic plan and vision is funneling down and funneling up through all different departments. I do a lot of project management, things that don't fit neatly in any specific space. It could be different kinds of legislation or different problems that might come across our desk. I'd say pretty much every day is different. And then on the economic development side, I mean, driving development, we're talking industrial, all the way down to small business, recruitment and retention.
Oh, okay. That was my next question was what was your day to day, but it does sound like that it's quite a bit of different things. And I know that I see you at a lot of different events as well. Mallory, can you talk about how the events that the city puts on sometimes in collaboration with 17 Strong, what impact do you think that makes on Hamilton?
Well, resident engagement is very important. We work for the residents of the city of Hamilton. So I think you might be referring to last weekend's 17 Strong Neighborhood Summit, where we had 500 attendees there to interact, not just with the city, but different nonprofits and organizations. Not only is it opening lines of communication between the city and the residents, many different lines of communication, but also a way for them to see us, ask questions, learn more about different departments and how things work. But community engagement, again, is not just through 17 Strong. We try to do it a bunch of different ways. I mean, even a city council meeting, which we do every other week. And you can even tune in on Facebook if you don't want to attend, but that's a great way to stay engaged. Coming out to special events, joining the Chamber of Commerce. We usually have a seat at most of the tables in town. So lots of opportunities to interact, but I think an engaged community is a strong community.
I love that. And I do have to say the Hamilton Neighborhood Summit, it's one of my favorite events in the city. It's such a great way to, like you said, get connected. The panels that we had there this year, and I mean, the years past were amazing. I know Dan Bates was on a panel. Dan, can you talk a little bit about your panel at the summit? Dan.
Sorry about that. My mouse was jumping around. Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of great presenters, and I think there were a lot of great discussions. I think ours was a little bit different. It was using vulnerability to create relationships of trust and meaningful relationships. So ours was totally interactive, and I think people enjoyed it. So we only had one person leave the session, so I don't know if they were a little concerned about that. But anyway, yeah, it was very interactive. We told everybody don't get comfortable because you're going to be moving around and meeting new people, and that's really what it was. So
I love that. I love that. And Mallory, going back to a little bit of what you were talking about, 17 Strong. For those who don't know what 17 Strong, can you kind of tell us a little overview about 17 Strong and the goals of 17 Strong?
I am not the best person to do that. If Susan can get on, she really would be. I am loosely involved in 17 Strong, but I'll give it a try because I know Susan's having some issues with her audio, but she can jump in. It actually started as a. Are you on, Susan? She's just echoing again. Okay, so it started as a community neighbor-led organization, not organization, a group, and they called themselves Sense of Place. And this goes back to Kathy Klink. I think most of us probably know who she is, local legend. Out of Sense of Place, to keep the story short, grew a more formalized neighborhood-led group called 17 Strong. And around that time, we really leaned into not branding each of our 17 neighborhoods, but embracing them and kind of naming them. So people had like an identifier of what neighborhood they were in. So 17 Strong relates to our 17 different unique neighborhoods. It's run by a board of directors that is still mostly residents. We do have a couple city staff that are on it to help facilitate. We have a Department of Neighborhoods, which is not to be confused with 17 Strong, but they do act as a liaison between. So there is a connection to the city, but it really is residents coming together to brainstorm how to improve their neighborhoods, how to connect their neighborhoods, and how to connect residents with local leaders. Susan, thumbs up if I got sort of that right. Again, I'm not the expert on 17 Strong.
I love that. I love that. Susan, did you want to add anything to that?
Are you able to hear me?
It's still getting a little bit of feedback.
Okay. I'll turn it off.
All right. So my next, I'm going to ask the same question to Lauren Nelson. So Lauren, tell us a little bit about your role and your department.
Sure. So I'm with the planning department, which is both the sort of long-term visioning of the city in terms of our comprehensive long-term Plan Hamilton, and then also the zoning side of things for the city. So, in terms of urban planning and strategically where we're looking, where different types of development should be happening, where are residential pockets, where are commercial corridors, sort of the layout from a 10,000-foot view of the city. That planning is housed within our department, and but then also the zoning. And so that has to do with, our zoning regulations. So there is some code enforcement involved in our work, but then we have the planning, a number of boards that planning department staff sort of liaisons with and is the secretary to these boards. So the Planning Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the Architectural Design Review Board. Planning Commission would be, so there are a lot of uses in the city or throughout the city that might not be permitted by right, but are permitted through a conditional use process, which just means there's a little bit more oversight for both Planning Commission, which is a board of residents, a representative from city council, and one representative of staff. So on a 7-member board, there's 5 residents, an elected official, and a city staff member. And then they make recommendations to city council for final approval or denial. So conditional use processes run through the Planning Commission. The Board of Zoning Appeals exists so that should a property owner or a resident have a reasonable request that a particular zoning regulation should not be applied, or they should be granted a variance to something, they have a route to pursue through the Board of Zoning Appeals. Again, this is a resident board. It's a 5-member board of residents, and their job really is to uphold the city's zoning regulations, but to also look at individual cases when there might be, a reasonable exemption should be granted. So is there something specific about a property where, it's not possible for them to meet the letter of the regulation? And so exceptions should be made. And so that's the point of that board. And then our Architectural Design Review Board, we have 3 historic districts in the city of Hamilton, plus a large number of individual properties that are listed at the state or federal level as historic that might be outside of those districts. And all of those properties in our historic districts and then individually listed properties, there is some oversight by our Architectural Design Review Board, again, a resident-led board. And their job really is to maintain the historic fabric and character of our community. And so property owners who live in our historic districts or own one of these individually listed properties, if they are going to make any exterior changes to their houses or commercial buildings, there is a process through the ADRB that runs through the planning department. You'd be working with staff as the liaison to get approval to make improvements or changes to the outside of your house.
Wow. So it almost sounds like you have a very, very different day-to-day as well, just like Mallory.
Right.
Lauren,
Yes.
you brought up something that I have a long-burning question. So Hamilton is known for so many beautiful historic buildings. What would you say if someone wanted to get like a historic house? What is the first thing that they would need to do? Is it a different process of getting, a newer house? How would you describe that?
No, I mean, I think from like a real estate transaction, it's not any different than buying any other house. But I would say, old houses can be very expensive to maintain. I think anybody that owns an old house would tell you that. So, I guess my advice to somebody who's interested in owning property that's historically designated or in one of our districts would to really do due diligence on the front end so that you're not sort of getting in over your head or, getting into a building and then realizing kind of after the fact upkeep, right? I mean, there's just a lot of wonderful charm that comes with old houses, but there is also a lot of maintenance and a lot of upkeep in terms of, the guts of the house might be really old, or, the roof might be really old, or the windows. And it's not as simple as just for a new house where you can just, do whatever you want to it, or go get windows off the shelf at Menards and install them. There's a bit more of a process and oversight to make sure that we are, not slowly over time chipping away at this historic fabric of our community, and losing that. And so there is just, I think for those that are doing their due diligence on the front end, I think our process, while it may sound sort of cumbersome, we really are not. We are trying to streamline things as best we can. And Brooke Wells is our point of contact for the ADRB. And there's a lot of stuff that can be administratively approved by staff that doesn't even have to go to a board meeting. But even if a particular request has to go to the board, they meet twice a month. So usually we can move things through pretty quickly. It doesn't need to be a lengthy process. But, I think that's just really good for people to know on the front end. Sometimes, unfortunately, we run into property owners who start a project, and a neighbor that lives in the historic district, or a board member, someone that most of our board members live in our historic districts, and they see somebody, replacing a roof or putting vinyl siding on a house, and they bring it to staff's attention. And then we have to, go have a hard conversation about, hey, do you know that your home is historic? Here's the process. Let's work with you. And we try to get in front of that as much as we can. We send out mailings to every property that's historically designated and in our historic districts. We just did another one in the last 6 months. But obviously properties change hands all the time, and the city doesn't know, when every real estate transaction happens. I think real estate disclosures, I think from like when you're closing on a house, it legally is supposed to let you know whether or not the property is historic. Now, some people say, I didn't know when I bought it. We don't, the city staff doesn't really have any control over that. But I think that's just why it's important. And I would say, even if you're not in a historic property, from a zoning perspective, is just always to do your due diligence when you're considering purchasing a house or a commercial property. A very simple phone call to the city to sort of ask those questions. Are there any outstanding, and Ken can speak to this, are there any outstanding, building code violations or health code violations or zoning violations from a previous property owner that I want to be aware of before I spend money and buy this? And that can save a new property owner a lot of headaches, doing a little bit of due diligence on the front end, so they're not getting into something that they didn't anticipate. And, we have no problem, would be happy to answer any of those questions, and, let people know whatever history we have from the city's end on a particular property. And that would include whether or not it's historic, so that, somebody's fully informed before they spend a lot of money and purchase something.
I love that. And I think that bridges that gap of those who maybe are new home buyers, didn't know. I think that's a brilliant thing to kind of put in this recap of this copy and conversation. Ben Cornice, he wrote in the chat, where are these homes located?
Sure. So our 3 historic districts are German Village, which is the area around Markham Park, just north of downtown to Black Street Bridge. The Rossville Historic District is Main Street, the first 3.5, 4 blocks of Main Street, and then south kind of up C Street and D Street, that direction. And then the Dayton Lane Historic District would be just to the north of High Street, between Martin Luther King and Route 4, kind of Campbell Avenue, Dayton, and that general area. So those are the historic districts. There's also a small inventory downtown in our central business district of historically designated properties. Now, those are not one of our 3 official historic districts, but there are some downtown properties that are listed. And then there is a scattering of individually listed properties, honestly, all over the city. There's some in Lindenwold, there's some farther out on the west side. And that would be because a property owner at some point sought that designation, most likely, where somebody submitted an application to the state of Ohio to be listed as a historic home. So that information is, I think, on our website. You can look at like our zoning, there's a link to a zoning map, and you can turn on those historic property layers. And you can also, if you're unsure, always just call the city and somebody can look up that information for you as well.
I love that. Thank you. Dan Bates, he just asked a question. Can you talk about different neighborhood plans and the visions for those districts? For instance, a business, it may be okay in one area, but not in another. It has to fit within the overall plan. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So that touches on the city's zoning. And so it's really, I can't give like a broad brush answer that sort of touches on the entire city. It's really going to be neighborhood specific and what the zoning is in that district. But I guess to zoom out, if you think about the far west side of Hamilton and kind of our big box stores, you've got Kroger and Walmart and Lowe's and sort of that environment where it's more chain restaurants, big box stores. The zoning reflects that. That looks very different than Pleasant Avenue through the Lindenwold Business District, which is a neighborhood business district that's meant to have walkable, small storefronts. And so, for example, think about setbacks. So how close to the property line does a building need to be located? If you compare the west side of Hamilton and our big box stores, right? They sit way back off of a property line. They have huge surface lots in front. So there's a sea of parking lot. As opposed to a neighborhood business district where the building is it's a 0-foot setback. The building is, right at the sidewalk. Parking's meant to be in the rear, maybe off of an alley, not a surface lot, in front. The character of that. And so then the types of businesses that are permitted in those different districts might vary. And then you can, then compare that to maybe some more residential variations in residential where you have, a Highland Park or Armandale or some areas on the west side of the city compared to like Jefferson and Riverview that are more traditional neighborhoods, kind of the fabric of those neighborhoods and what those look like. Some of our neighborhoods are more traditionally single family, and so the zoning reflects that. And we have other neighborhoods that are a mix of single family and multifamily, and they might have some small apartment buildings that are 3 or 4 units. And so that zoning would be different than a single family neighborhood. And again, we are happy to answer those questions for anybody that, it's always good to ask that question on the front end from a zoning perspective. If you're looking for something or you have a particular business and you want to, look to see where it's possible to locate in the city, all of that can be found on the City of Hamilton's planning. So if you go to hamilton-oh.gov/planning, there is a link to an interactive zoning map. So you can look at the entire footprint of the city and see, where different zoning districts exist. There's also, we have a permitted use chart, and it's a very simple, kind of navigable chart that has on the left side a whole bunch of different, from A to Z, hundreds of different uses. So if you're, I'm an auto dealer, or I'm a retailer, or I'm an office user, whatever it might be, an industrial user, there's a chart that has all the zoning districts on it, and you can look across those zoning districts to say, okay, this particular use, I'm an industrial user. My business is permitted in, I-1, I-2, whatever. There might be 3 or 4 zoning districts where you're permitted. And then you can look at that map of where those districts are located to sort of figure out the areas of town where that use might be permitted. But again, we are also always just happy to talk through that with someone if they find that too cumbersome to sort of navigate that on their own, from the website. It is all out there, but I understand people that are in it every day, it might be a little overwhelming.
And I think breaking it down was super helpful. I'm actually going to include that link for planning in the recap to everyone.
Great.
That's perfect. So I want to introduce a few more panelists before we ask the other questions. I would like, Dan, would you like to introduce Ken Rivera and kind of ask him about his role? I think you're
on mute.
Didn't unmute. Okay. Hi, Ken. So, Ken has one of those roles that is very important, but people may not see him unless they're in the middle of something, or they're building something, or they're changing something. So, Ken, why don't you tell us what you do?
Yes, thank you. So, as the building department, we're charged with enforcing the regulations of the state's building codes. So, how that works is there is at the state levels through the Department of Commerce, there's something called the Board of Building Standards for Ohio. And they basically are in charge of all the building departments across the state. They're the ones that write the building codes. It's not even a local code that we enforce. It's actually a statewide one. They try to do that to make it a little bit more consistent for contractors working in the various different locations. So at least within the state, everybody's literally starting from the same page. That being said, obviously there's going to be, you'll hear a lot from contractors that each jurisdiction is different. The reason for that is because even though we're starting from the same page, the requirements aren't always so black and white. Maybe there's something that I interpret differently than another jurisdiction might, and that sort of thing. But anything involving construction, new construction, existing buildings, houses that undergo remodeling or changes, sometimes not even necessarily physical changes. Sometimes it's just a space that's being used differently, puts it in a different category as far as the code is concerned. So there's a different set of safety requirements in order to be allowed to do that. So the way that we do that is through permits. I'm sure everybody's heard that term before. It just comes from giving permission to do what it is that you want to do. One distinction I'd make from that a lot of people tend to get understandably confused on is kind of like what Lauren was talking about with the local requirements that our planning or zoning regulations stem from. That's all local, unlike what I just said, where mine's the state. And what that means is those local designations for what you're allowed to do in different parts of the city. That's really the best way to look at that is like a starting point. That means that you are allowed to put something like that retail business in that location, where my codes now come in and say, okay, here's what you have to do in order to meet the minimum requirements of safety standards in order to do that there. So that's the difference. A lot of times we'll get that question where people will be like, oh, I was told that I'm allowed to do this here. Yes, you are. It's just this is the process to do that. And again, it's all from safety. The codes develop over time, unfortunately, in a reactive way because something bad happened, and here's what a group of professionals got together and said, this is what we can do to minimize the risk of that happening again. Of course, it's not even foolproof. There's always going to be bad things that happen, but the goal is to try to minimize that as much as possible. People getting hurt, loss of life, things like that. That's why these codes even exist. So yeah, we regulate all that. We do all the inspections. So the process in a nutshell, somebody would apply for a permit. We have to have a set of plans to review. Those plans can greatly vary from being highly technical and involved to just something simply on a piece of paper that at least summarizes what's being done. And we try our best to take that kind of customizable approach so that it's not like across the board. Everybody always has to hire an architect. Everybody always has to spend a bunch of money and time on plans, when a lot of times maybe that's not, really what's necessary. We try to make it as painless as possible. So we'll review it. My department gets to serve as the project coordinator for the city. One thing that Hamilton does that's a real competitive advantage over other jurisdictions is that we like to call it a one-stop shop. We will take that application, we'll route it to every other department that it may apply to, needs to take a look at it, fire department, planning, health, you name it, whoever might, have a say in it. And what that does is it keeps that customer from having to, okay, I'm going to this office and applying for this, and then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to apply for their approval also for the same thing. And those two aren't communicating with each other. So maybe one, just turned it down and now that's affecting the other one. We're doing all that behind the scenes in-house for you. So you're just dealing with the one office and we're putting together all that, review at the same time for you. So it saves you a lot of time, a lot of headache, a lot of jumping around. And most places don't do that. For example, just in our own county, in Butler County's building department, which I should say, since we're in Butler County, even though we're in the county, they have their own building department because we're our own jurisdiction within that. We have our own building department. So they cover areas of the county that don't have their own building departments. So within Butler County, for example, City of Middletown, City of Fairfield, we all have our own building departments. And the rest of it is pretty much Butler County is a good way to look at it. But if you apply there, one of the first things they're going to say is, well, have you gotten the local zoning township to approve that? No, okay, well, go back to them first and then come back and see us, or fire department and vice versa. And I mean, I've heard the horror stories, and you can imagine the headache of dealing with that where we don't have that here. And it's not just a process. I mean, we communicate regularly. Lauren, Cindy at the fire department, we all work very closely together. It's a very simple. We can walk over and talk to them, pick up the phone. I tell people all the time too, feel free to use me as a single point of contact. If I don't know the answer, chances are I know the right person who will, just because of the nature of, working so closely together. So there's a lot of coordination that we do. It's all geared towards, again, making the process as painless as possible while still not compromising the regulations themselves. I mean, we can't compromise safety, but we definitely try to, give the customer a benefit of doubt whenever we possibly can, and just try to, again, help them through that process. I mean, I tell people all the time, we're in the business of saying no a lot, but the difference here is we're not going to leave it there. What we're interested in is helping you get to yes. Here's unfortunately, the bad news, but just so you know the process, here's what it would take to be able to tell you what you want to hear. Sometimes that involves spending a lot of money, a lot of time, and sometimes it might even be a deal breaker for a project. Hopefully not. We always try to say, here's the path to get there. But that's in a nutshell. We will issue those permits. Our office does all the inspections, which is another plus. A lot of places have different offices you have to go to for different inspections. We do all of it. I even do a lot of inspections. After we're done here, I'm going to do the footing inspection for the new 7 Brew on the west side of town over there in front of Royal King. So that's going to get started. So and that's nice too, being we're as small a department as we possibly can to keep the costs down, everything, obviously permit fees and that sort of thing. We do, I mean, there's a lot going on in the city, but it's nice to wear all those hats. As busy as we are, it's still nice to be involved in both aspects of it. As an inspector, it helps, to be able to say, well, I remember this part through the plan review, and then that, I can sometimes help the contractor identify an issue. Hey, be aware of this so that it's not too late, that kind of thing. And so we're always trying to use our office as an advantage as much as we can to help the customers. A lot more to it than that, but that's everything in a nutshell.
Thank you for elaborating on that. That's going to be super helpful. When you were chatting about this, Yaya put in the chat, Yaya Doso, he said, is there any state or local requirement for seal coating, specifically asphalt maintenance?
I just got asked that specific question the other day, actually. No is the short answer. I mean, you're just adding a coat of seal on top of an existing parking lot. Where we're supposed to get involved is when the actual asphalt is being milled up and you're actually replacing the parking lot, or maybe you're adding on to it or building a new parking lot. That would involve a few other departments as well. Our engineering department wants to see how much impervious area is. Now there's a lot more rain that's not getting soaked into the ground. Or Lauren's department would want to see, where's this going? Is it, going to have the right number of spaces, that sort of thing. And that's a good example there too. Technically, I could use the regulations I enforce by saying yes to that. I personally feel like that'd be unreasonable. I look at it more as a maintenance issue. The reason I say I could is because just the fact that you're seal coating and you're going to have to restripe everything, I could say, well, I need to see that those stripes are in the same places before and you got the right number of handicap spaces and all that. I feel like it's reasonable expectation of the customer just be able to take that upon themselves rather than make them go through a permit process for something like that, if that makes sense. But that's a good question. No, we don't. We look at that as maintenance. So go right ahead.
I'm going to chime in on that just from a zoning perspective. So I think it also depends what the use is. So if it's there may be oversight from a zoning perspective, depending on the property and what's happening there. So for example, it might be an existing commercial property, but if it is a new tenant that's moving in or something is changing there, that it's now a conditional use and they're stepping through planning commission in the city council process, it's not. So there's more oversight, and then the condition of the parking lot would absolutely be one of the conditions of approval, and that it be maintained and in good repair. And so it might be something that city council requires that they either completely repave or that they reseal it. To Ken's point, we would be looking at the parking calculations based on the use. They would have to have a certain number of parking spaces, which the zoning code outlines depending on the use, how many parking spaces you need. Where zoning would not come into play would be, for example, let's say it's one of our strip malls and it's one retail moves out and another retail that's permitted by right moves in. There's no zoning, there's no approval, there's nothing from a zoning perspective that the city needs to be involved in. And so then we're not looking at the parking lot. So I guess the answer to the question from a zoning perspective is it depends.
Perfect. So it depends. Yeah, did you get that? Thank you. So up next, I want to introduce Cindy Hogg. Cindy, can you tell us a little bit about your role, your department, and maybe something that people would not know? Sorry, I think you're still muted.
There we go. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. My name is Cindy Hogg, and I'm the Director of Health for the City of Hamilton Health Department. I oversee 5 divisions of our department's work. We have the Environmental Health Division, the Nursing Division, the Vital Statistics Division, Public Health Emergency Preparedness, and then our Community Engagement Division as well. So our department, as Ken's, are required to enforce state legislation for some of our environmental health programs. That would be licensing of food operations, licensing of public pools. There's 10 different areas: residential sewage systems, private water, rabies surveillance, body art facilities, etc. And all of that legislation is in place to keep the public safe, as Ken has stated. A lot of our codes, state codes, are put into effect when there's some kind of outbreak of disease, and there's a way that we can prevent that. So the nursing division deals with our complex medical health. They deal with outbreaks. They work with communicable disease surveillance. I want to talk a little bit about our CMH program, which is our complex medical health program. There are approximately 200 families in the city of Hamilton who a child in that home has a complex medical health issue. And we work with the state to help them get the things that they need. For example, a wheelchair or shoes or something along those lines that would help them live a healthier, better life. It's a very important program, I believe, in our city that we're part of. And I'm very happy that we're a part of that program. Vital statistics, we issue government documents, your birth certificate, death certificates, and then we also handle all of the funeral home burial permits as well. So that we're very busy there as well. Public health emergency preparedness. we are constantly preparing for a communicable disease outbreak, such as COVID, in which we would handle vaccination clinics or as far preparing for an issue like a tornado. So we work to write up plans for our actions that we would do in those situations. And then we also have exercises. We have what we call tabletop exercises across Butler County, across our region, across the state that we are involved in. And we also have a community engagement and division, which is fairly new in the last 3 years. So we are out in the community trying to engage with residents of all ages on how to improve their health. So that's a program that we were all very excited about. We work with kids, we work with adults, we work with the elderly. So lots of aspects to that and lots of fun with that too. So we hope to see you at farmers markets, some of the city events. We're at neighborhood community nights. We were at the summit. And please stop by and talk to us and let us know any health things that you would, any kind of health issues or health information that you are interested in or would want to know about.
Thank you, Cindy. And recently, Dan connected me with Cindy to talk about how we can collaborate for Healthy Hamilton, the neighborhood games, which is a fun physical fitness challenge for all of the youth. We are also looking into doing wellness mixers to spotlight all of the health and wellness and mindfulness businesses in the area, such as Spoken Bicycle, Main Street Running Company, Terra Luna Pilates, 1111 Pilates, Hamilton Yoga Studio, Spooky Nook Sports, all of these amazing spots. We're looking for continued ways to get the community involved, to spotlight these businesses, and to make Hamilton healthy. Cindy, can you talk a little bit more about the neighborhood games?
Yes, last year we started the Healthy Hamilton Neighborhood Games. And what we did is each day for 2 weeks, we went to a different neighborhood park. And we had 5 different games that the kids could come out and play. And we actually ran it in each of the parks as kind of like a practice games. And then we actually at Markham Park, we actually had kind of like the Olympic style where you came and the top winners received medals, first, second, and third place. And there was actually a neighborhood winner who earned the most points. So it was really a lot of fun for all the kids in the neighborhoods. We are continuing it this year. We are partnering with the Hamilton City Schools. We will be at their food truck events during the summer. And we work with Envision Partnerships and a couple of other agencies, the Hamilton Community Foundation, and just agencies throughout the city to help us with that program as far as volunteers and funding and supplies. So each of the kids that come and they play a game, they then get to go home with a soccer ball, a hula hoop, a jump rope, something of their choice that they can continue to engage in physical exercise over the summer. So really fun program. And we're involved with 17 Strong Neighborhoods with the Cube 2, which houses all the games for us.
I love. And just by talking to all 4 of you, I am realizing how ignorant I was to how busy you all are. I feel like you all have like 3 different roles under your titles. So I'm even impressed that you guys respond to any of my emails. So thank you. Ben Cornish just wrote, he said, Jason, you brainstormed that idea out afterwards. I would like to get an update, please. Yes, Ben, I would love that. Just to kind of mind everyone's time, I think we have about 15 more minutes. I had just a few more questions and wanted to open it up to anyone else on the call. So what, and this will be a cross-panel kind of question. What is one project or initiative that is happening right now that you're especially excited about and think residents should know about?
I guess I can take this. There's not really just one. I think I'm most excited about what I call kind of the MLK to Pleasant Avenue corridor. So all of we've been working on downtown revitalization for the past 15 years. We're into neighborhood revitalization for Build Back the Block, but development is still really strong. So if you think about the Black Street Bridge, the Cohen recycling site with the Crawford Hoying development, then you go up to the street to the Beckett Paper site that we're in active discussions. Then the two lots next to the Beckett Paper have one project that's proposed for new housing, one project that's proposed for a hotel, and then you go all the way down to Lindenwald with the Schuler Bennyhofen redevelopment and the potential for additional commercial activity in the Pleasant Avenue, Lindenwald area. That's really exciting. And then there's also a lot of movement around Miami University Hamilton with the change to the Polytechnic and the AM Hub and opportunities for us to do some, we're talking about doing low head dam removal and maybe some adding some safer amenities to the river and then taking that through the Miami Hamilton campus, through Lindenwald, and all the way to what we proposed Amtrak station on what we're calling kind of the rivers to the rails area. So, and then build back the block, 100 new homes in the next 5 years. I mean, there's so much going on. I couldn't pick one, but I think one of the exciting things is for many years we were hyper-focused on our revitalization efforts for our downtown, which was a necessity. I mean, you tell the health of a city by what its downtown looks like, and we've been really great success, and we continue to drive that development. But for the first time ever, we've been able to pair economic development with community development, which I call kind of that neighborhood revitalization. So we're stabilizing our neighborhoods, and we're still doing development, and we've got great growth in our industrial area too. Tons of new jobs announced last year, and another one big announcement coming up in our Hamilton Enterprise Park probably in the next 3 to 6 months. So we're doing great. So everyone should still be excited and hopeful for our future.
Yeah, I echo a lot of that too. I was thinking of like Schuler Benninghoff that project coming online here soon. That's a big one in that same corridor. But just in general, I know one thing that I've seen, because like Mallory said, we were focused originally on downtown and then Main Street, and the thinking was, that whole east-west corridor, and then eventually seeing that same progress go north-south, and it's real interesting, not just to be a part of it, but to see that actually happening. And I know because I'm getting calls all of a sudden for, buildings that either I've never even been in before or I've never gotten a call about, because they are, just a few blocks off of that path, because that line, that horizontal line, if you can visualize it that way, it is starting to expand that way. And same thing with like the Route 4 corridor and the adjoining neighborhoods. So it's real interesting to see the interest and the progress starting to take place and revitalize, whether it's a property that's just sat vacant or hasn't really had a whole lot happening with it in a number of years. Now suddenly, something it's just a matter of time here before, somebody picks it up and does something with it. But another one I'll throw out there too, we're in the review process right now for the new Kroger Marketplace over on the west side off of Brookwood. So you have over on Brookwood Avenue, you have that O'Reilly's and that storage center right there. And the other half of that center that was torn down has just been, an empty field for a while now. That's, if you haven't already heard, that's where the Kroger is going to be moving and building their new Kroger Marketplace. So that'll be a big project as well.
I don't know if we're hearing it here first, but these feel like a lot of new developments that I had not heard the logistics. So this is exciting. Does anyone have any questions so far? You can put it in the chat, ask away. The next question I wanted to ask was, how can residents and businesses and community organizations actively support the work that your departments are doing?
I'll chime in from a zoning and planning department. I don't know. This is sort of an adjacent answer to the question you're asking. I think the best way that we can work together with the property owners is that property owners are reaching out on the front end. If you are considering buying a property, if you are looking to relocate a business, if you are looking to do some renovations, that you're calling the city or emailing on the front end, whether that's the health department, the building department, the planning department from a zoning perspective. It not only makes the project much better for the property owner, but it makes, it's a better, less of a headache for city staff and less of a headache for the property owner, I guess would be my answer, that we can have those conversations and let's talk through what approvals are necessary, what updates might be needed to the building from a health code or fire code or building code perspective. Is the zoning appropriate? And it's always better for everybody involved that we're having those conversations on the front end and not reactively having to have those conversations after something's already in motion.
I agree with that. It's so much easier, especially with any kind of business that's going to be selling food. If you contact us first, we can give you guidance and talk about what you want to do and what code requires. And that may be a change. After you have that conversation, you may decide to do something differently. So it's important to be contacted in the beginning before you actually start building a facility and talking to us about, what requirements are. And again, those are requirements through Ohio Department of Agriculture, Ohio Department of Health, Ohio EPA. So, these are requirements that it's not, city staff deciding what it is. It's actually state legislation. So, we want to be helpful. We want to help you through your project and help it be the best that it can. So the best thing to do is to reach out in the beginning.
I love that. Thank you, Cindy. Amy Ansorg asked, Mallory mentioned Amtrak. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes. Well, my first suggestion is you should invite Mike Gurr from our Public Works Department to talk about the work that he's done researching where an Amtrak station could go in Hamilton and how it might work. He's really our expert on it. But one of the main sites that we identified is over by the South Hamilton Crossing, just based off the land that we have available there as a potential location for an Amtrak. Again, I'm not the expert on it, but Mike Gurr might be a great next person, and he can talk about all things public works too. But we've former council member Michael Ryan has gone to Washington, D.C. to help lobby for us to get an Amtrak station. There's all kinds of different lines, the Cardinal line. I don't know all of the ins and outs of it, but we are hopeful that that could be a potential site for a stop.
That would be very, very exciting. I wanted to ask you guys, so looking ahead, what should people in Hamilton be most excited about that's happening within like the next few months? I know we've got the Hamilton Unfolded. Can you guys talk a little bit more about that?
I will. Hamilton Unfolded is actually an event that's coming out of City of Sculpture, and it's coordinating with the city small business development specialists as well, but it's kind of, I don't know if they want to call it a replacement to Ice Fest, but it is a sculptural paper event that's going to be happening in late April. I'm blanking on the date. There's going to be installations all over downtown, including outdoors and indoors. There's going to be some specific park activations, I think Rotary Park, Armstead Park. But if anybody remembers Ice Fest, just think of this as the paper version of it, and it's a nod to our rich industrial paper history. And again, it's a signature event for City of Sculpture.
Thank you, Mallory. I think that's going to be really, really fun. Great way to bring people to downtown Hamilton and throughout. Does anyone have any more questions before we wrap up for today?
Jason, can you hear me? It's Susan.
I can hear you and there's no feedback.
Yay. I just wanted to put a plug in for April the 24th, Friday, April 24th is the Great Miami Riverway Summit. So this involves all the cities along the Riverway from Sydney, Ohio, all the way down to Hamilton. And it's an annual event. This year just happens to be the year that Hamilton will host it. It's an all-day event. It's open to anyone. It will be held at the Fitness Center, but on the riverfront. So it's our opportunity in Hamilton to really talk about what has happened over the years, how we are reactivating the riverfront. It will include several sessions during the day that people can attend to learn more about Hamilton, and that's for our residents and anyone else in the state. So it's an all-day event. We will have a lot of activities going on the river. I know that the county is going to have some river rescue boats down on the water. The rowing team will be there. They're also, Miami Conservancy District is the one that is really behind this. There's a coalition along the riverway. And so they will be talking about some of the things that are happening with the low-level dams and restructuring, especially in the area of Miami, what could be along there. And I know someone mentioned earlier about everyone wanting to reactivate activities along the river. And so I think there's some really big things to come in Hamilton in the next 5 years, but this event's a good one to attend and to learn more. I know that many guests will come in the night before. There's an event on Thursday night and probably stay through Friday night. So it's a fun time, and you will see lots of people and more information about how to get involved.
Thank you, Susan Vaughn. I appreciate you so much. Everyone, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. I think this was a fantastic conversation and kind of bridging the gap and just spotlighting the amazing things that our city leaders are doing and continuing to do to make Hamilton's glow up even bigger and better. In just a moment, Tiffany said that she can kind of give a list of upcoming events, but I did want to spotlight 17 Strong, the group that we talked about earlier. They do amazing things with giving away micro grants, which a lot of people don't realize is something that we do. That's a great way for community members to say, hey, this is what I want to see in our city. If you are interested in applying for a micro grant, go to 17 Strong's website. I think the deadline is the 13th. So in 3 days, they've got a toolkit. And I just found this out at the Neighborhood Hamilton Summit. If you were not there, shame on you. But they were giving away toolkits to show you exactly how to apply for and the process of getting a micro grant. So amazing, amazing things happening in Hamilton. Super excited and inspired by you all. Tiffany, if you can wrap us up with the upcoming events, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we have some upcoming events. March 17th, which is also St. Patrick's Day. We're going to have networking leads at Basil 1791. March 18th is a contractors roundtable. You can also find all these events on our chamber calendar in the Explore Hamilton app. March 19th is our Champions of Diversity. Deanne, do you want to talk a second about Champions of Diversity? Because I think it's going to be a really powerful event.
Yes, we started Champions of Diversity a few years ago, and we've taken a different approach each year. The first year was, kind of what does diversity look like? And we've looked into what the schools are doing. We've last year had a panel of people who had immigrated to this country legally and started businesses and what that path looked like. This year, we're really excited because this is diverse paths to success. So these are people who have either used a program or the military or something to change their life. So we will have a couple ladies who have gone through the self entrepreneurial program. We have our assistant police chief who's going to talk about how he changed his life going into the military. So we have great panelists. We also have Ashley from Miami University talking about being a first generation college student and how she came out of Appalachia and used programs and things to change her life. So this is going to be, I think it's going to be a really, really powerful session, and I am really looking forward to it.
And then on March 24th, we have another coffee and conversation. And then March 31st, we have a multi-chamber business after hours with the Fairfield Chamber at Oscar Event Center. So make sure to get on the chamber website and register for those events.
Thank you, Tiffany. Tiffany is our Director of Marketing for the Greater Hamilton Chamber. If you would like to get our newsletter, The Source, you can reach out to her. Also, she handles all of our ribbon cuttings. If there are no further questions, y'all, thank you so much for joining today. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.